The Red Bull driver Max Verstappen clinched his third Drivers' Championship title by winning the Qatar GP. It was a glorious moment for both the driver and the team, but while Red Bull and their fans were jubilating, the Silverstone-based team Mercedes was looking back at their performance, wondering why things didn't go as planned. The team had come up with whatever thought was a foolproof plan that would either make one of the drivers finish in first place or earn them 2 podiums, but the drivers crashed into each other and their chances to win got ruined. So what exactly happened? Going into the Qatar Grand Prix weekend, the Mercedes team were particularly pumped up owing to the fact that they believed they'd be able to redeem themselves at the sprint race in Qatar, and also maybe win their first race of the season. They had not performed too well at the first 3 sprint races, which were held at Azerbaijan, Austria and Belgium, but since Qatar believed to be Hamilton's strong forte due to his incredible performance in 2021, they had high hopes. So with fingers crossed that the W14 won't hinder their chances, the team began to plot and plan. And on Friday, things started on a good note, with luck playing a major part. Remember that the FIA introduced standardized track limits for all venues this season. For those who can't recollect, the track limits state that if a car has all 4 wheels beyond the white lines that marks off the track, it would be considered a track limit violation, and there'll be a penalty for it. These track limits helped the Mercedes drivers earn P2 and P3 at the qualifying race, but initially it affected Hamilton too. Hamilton had initially started the qualifying race on a good note with a very good track time, earning him a provisional P2 position. Then on his final lap he suffered a sudden snap that sent him outside track limits, so he had to ditch his attempt and ended up in P5. Russell was in P4 and he was ready to make the most of it at the Grand Prix on Sunday, but luck shone on them both through a mishap that had happened to both McLaren drivers. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were both contenders for the P2 and P3 due to their incredible pace, but both drivers got their final laps deleted due to violation of track limits. And so Lando, who was in P2, found himself in P10, while Piastri found himself in P6. With the 2 McLarens out the way, Russell and Hamilton automatically earned the P2 and P3 position. How lucky! Although after the qualifying, Hamilton came out to say there was no need for track limits at Qatar, and it was unfair to Norris and Piastri that they both got their final laps deleted. One can't help but think he was a little pleased it had worked in his favour. So with the qualifying race ending on a good note, they couldn't wait to see what the sprint race had in store for them. Based on previous agreements, the 2 drivers had started the race using different tyre strategies. Hamilton had started on medium tyres, which made him qualify outside of the top 10, and Russell had started on the soft, making him a forerunner. In the opening stages, Russell had been able to get ahead of Oscar Piastri, but further into the race, the soft tyres began to degrade, and Piastri, who was on mediums, was able to gain back his lead, which eventually ended with him winning his first F1 race. Hamilton, who was also on the mediums, also seized the opportunities when those on soft tyres began to lose their pace. Soon he was ahead of the 2 Ferrari drivers and Alonso, and was able to finish the race in 5th place. The 7-time world champion described what his experience was like to race on medium tyres. It was a difficult start with the medium tyre. It just wasn't firing up the same as the soft tyre. The guys on the soft tyre were so quick, so I was gaining positions, losing positions. It was actually a really good start, and then I got behind these cars. Then once we got going, and they started having an impact on their tyre, I was able to start getting past. But he stated that he had been in support of the tyre strategy and didn't mind that he had finished behind Russell due to the advantage he had. If I had started on the soft, I would have gained several places perhaps in the beginning, but then long down the road, I would have struggled, just like everybody else. So I think it was important for us to separate the cars for George to get the information on the soft. After the sprint, Toto Wolff had sent in a subtle message saying now that they knew how well the W14 can perform, they should stick to the plan to earn the desired result. So, Lewis Hamilton with a good position, we know what can happen. And the plan was simple. Hamilton should act as a backup for Russell on Sunday. But did they stick to the plan? Not one bit. Everyone knew it would be quite difficult for Hamilton to sit back and watch George be the leading Mercedes. But no one could expect that it would take only a few seconds into the race for him to ditch the plans. Just before the race, the 2 drivers had discussed working together on the grid, and if anyone saw them, it would seem like they actually meant it. But it only took 10 seconds for the drivers to forget about working together. So what happened? Just like in the sprint, the two drivers agreed to different tyre strategies. This time around, George was given the medium tyres while Hamilton was out on the softs. At the beginning of the race, Verstappen and Russell had shot off the line together, being the leading pair, and since Hamilton was on softs, he just drove behind them, not wanting to wear off his tyres too early. And of course, he had intentions of sticking to the plan, but then an opportunity arose that he couldn't just say no to. Verstappen had slowly switched to the left, with plans to cover the inside, and Russell had also followed suit, and this resulted in them leaving a huge space on the right side. Hamilton, who was behind them, saw the space and was so excited, he totally forgot about the plan and drove right ahead. But he had miscalculated. The space was not as wide as it seemed. This resulted in the two Mercedes drivers crashing into each other. Russell's left front wheel clipped Hamilton's right rear, and this sent the latter skidding into the gravel trap. Although Russell suffered an impact because he spun around and lost his second position, Hamilton's car couldn't be salvaged. The champion driver had yelled into the radio after the incident, saying that his teammate had purposely taken him out. Russell, on the other hand, was also pretty mad, saying that this was the second time Hamilton had caused an accident while trying to overtake him. These reactions from both drivers made it seem like the Mercedes team would have to worry about the tension brewing between the two drivers, but after the race they both conceded that they had meant each other no harm. The incident at Qatar was not the first time such an occurrence was happening. In Singapore, Russell had tried to swoop ahead to gain victory and got into an accident that gave his teammate the opportunity to finish on the podium. Then at Suzuka, Russell was clearly in the lead, but the team had instructed him to allow Hamilton through for some reason. So Russell, who tends to be at the receiving end in most situations, must have been really mad. However, after the race, Hamilton had done the reasonable thing to do. He apologized. He also accepted the blame. I think in the heat of the moment, I was obviously frustrated, because I thought I felt this tap from the rear end, but I don't think George had anywhere to go. I think this is an unfortunate scenario. I'm happy to take responsibility because that's my role. I think it was easy for George to agree to brush it under the carpet because he finished fourth, not too far off. It would have hurt him more if he hadn't been able to get back ahead after the crash. Well, now that Verstappen and Red Bull have sealed both Drivers' and Constructors' Championship titles, it would be better if the Mercedes drivers push their selfish interests aside and focus on getting P2 on the Constructors' table, because their selfish interests had led them to losing out on what would have been the team's second two podium wins of the season. Hopefully they've learned from their mistakes. So what do you think? Kindly like, share and subscribe. See you in the next video.